It is a very beautiful and a very exciting day here in Bitcoin world with three big pieces of news in the Bitcoin universe today that we should definitely go over. We're going to be talking about the 30x stock increase for MicroStrategy. We're going to be talking about the fact that Ross Ulbricht is now free thanks to Donald Trump. And we're also going to talk about the odds of a $1 million Bitcoin rising. Hello, everyone. It is Luke from beautiful Medellin, Colombia. It is absolutely gorgeous here. I would highly recommend if you ever want a place to go to hang out, to see somewhere beautiful in South America, this place is absolutely gorgeous. It is very nice to be down here to hang out with Bitcoiners. And it's also very work friendly. I'm working uh, most of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It's nice to have some play days and it's nice to have some work days with quite a view. So without further ado, or any more of Luke rambling on, let's get into the big pieces of news. First of all, let's talk about point number one. MicroStrategy has increased their shares by a factor of 30x. This has happened as of yesterday, or not yesterday, excuse me, but a couple days ago, January 20th. MicroStrategy has increased the shares from 330 million shares to 10.3 billion shares. Okay, as Bitcoin News accurately reports, this paves the way for future fundraising to acquire more Bitcoin. The vote got 55.8% approval. Why is this a big deal? Why is this something worth looking into? It's because it gives Michael Saylor the opportunity to do all kinds of new creative things in the future, whether it's to issue more stock to acquire more Bitcoin, or if it's to have all kinds of stock splits in the future. This has paved the way by allowing up to a 30x in shares. Now, a lot of people with shorter term mindsets online, especially on Twitter, are complaining that, oh, wait, this means that, we're just going to get diluted more, that this means that the stock price is going to go down, blah, 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 etc. And that is totally possible. MicroStrategy stock so far is down today a couple percent, I think. I don't have the price in front of me, but Bitcoin's up on a green day. MicroStrategy is down on a red day so far. So, of course, the market's pricing in that a little bit short term. But if your long term belief is that you want to end up with more sats per share, more Bitcoin per share, then this is the optimal strategy for you to go. This is the way at which options are going to be able to continue to capitalize on the volatility of MicroStrategy stock is by allowing for continued stock splits forever. This is a really, really big deal, especially for those that own MicroStrategy stock. Let's do a quote here to better understand what on earth Michael Saylor is thinking. The first country to print its own currency for Bitcoin is the country that wins, right? I mean, look at what MicroStrategy has done with our own corporate equity. As long as the asset is being purchased, as long as the asset that is being purchased is accretive, the dilution is actually a benefit to the shareholders. Okay, to quote Michael Saylor. To put it in different lingo speak, right? Here we have dollars. Here's a $10 bill as an example, right? There's two ways to value the dollar system. You have the specific currency unit itself. This is 10 currency units. And you have the dollar system as a whole, all of the dollars in the world. What Michael Saylor is doing is he is diluting the individual units of his stock to get a larger pie. He is trying to create more shares to dilute shareholders into having a smaller section of the pie by inflating and debasing upon them. However, in doing that, because he is growing the overall pie, it actually nets out as a benefit of more sats per share for every single shareholder with a larger portion of the pie. And if you're owning MicroStrategy, that's the question you have to ask for yourself. This dilution is good news. If your ultimate goal is more Bitcoin, if your ultimate goal is more dollars, it may not be good news, right? But if you're somebody that's pricing your MicroStrategy shares in terms of Bitcoin, this is very good news because this means the size of the pie is probably going to grow a lot in the coming years. These 10 billion shares obviously aren't coming out in a matter of months. They're probably coming out in a matter of years. It means the pie is going to get a lot bigger and your slice of the pie is going to shrink as your shares are dumped on by Michael Saylor, right? To the tune of a 30x, right? Of course, the stock splits, is a more nuanced discussion. You get to keep, 10 times more shares or whatever, right? But the point is, you're being dumped on with new currency. However, because that currency, in this case, corporate equity, is being backed by Bitcoin, you actually end up out ahead. But let's not listen to Luke Broyles. Let's not listen to Michael Saylor. Let's listen to what AI has to say. This is what Grok has to say about the situation. Michael Saylor has made a notable statement regarding the first country to print its own currency to buy Bitcoin. He suggests that the first nation to do so will gain significant economic advantage. Specifically, he has compared this strategy to what MicroStrategy did with the shares, implying that the issuing currency to acquire Bitcoin could lead to a substantial increase in a nation's market cap, similar to how MicroStrategy's market cap grew from $1 billion to $100 billion by issuing stock to buy Bitcoin. This is why I've been saying for years, you should be paying attention to Michael Saylor. Not because you should worship him, not because you should worship him, not because he's perfect, not even because he's rich, But you should be paying attention to what he's going to do because this is the first instance of this game book being played out on the global stage. Let's take a look at Colombia here, right? Here in Medellin, there are a few million people who live here. Guess what? People here don't want Colombian pesos. They want American dollars. That's what they want. They don't want Bitcoin yet, and they don't want Colombian pesos. Why? Because they know the Colombian peso is trending down forever against the US dollar. They understand that. People in the United States may not yet understand the dollar is trending down forever against the stronger currency, which is Bitcoin. But here, people definitely do understand that the dollar is forever growing when priced in terms of Colombian pesos. So my point is, you look at a country like this, and then you think about from the American perspective, what is America going to do? Donald Trump is now president of the United States. What exactly does Donald Trump want? Donald Trump has a big ego. He wants a big reputation. He wants a big legacy for the world to remember him for forever as the savior of America or whatever, right? That's what Donald Trump wants. That's what he really wants at the end of the day. And he's going to do what I think it takes for him, in his mind, to get to that goal. And one of the things he wants to do to get to that goal is to have what? A stronger dollar. That's what he wants. He wants American dollars to be as valuable as possible. He wants the American dollar to be strong because he interprets that as a good thing for the world. However, again, there's two ways to look at it. He wants the dollar system as a whole, as an allocation of the world's fiat currency, to be a large percentage. He wants to keep printing money because you can't stop printing money, right? As much as we want to have this Department of Government Efficiency, all that cute, wonderful stuff, the reality is we have to keep printing money. We have to keep forcing property values up. We have to keep forcing those tax receipts up because if we don't keep doing that, the bonds collapse, they implode, and bonds run the world. Bonds run the American political currency system. So Donald Trump wants a more strong US dollar system with the total market capitalization so that he can weaken the dollar more and print more. It's exactly what Michael Saylor wants at the nation state level. However, I don't know if Donald Trump realizes yet that Bitcoin is the most cost-effective way for him to do that. Yes, sure, reducing government regulation is probably going to help. Yes, sure, growing the American economy is probably going to help. But the cheapest and fastest way to assure that your balance sheet is as strong as possible is to acquire the strongest asset in human history possible. And this, I think, is a really big deal, which we'll get to more in just a moment when we're talking about a $1 million Bitcoin. Now, I must say something very explicit here, because a lot of people I talk to that are in MicroStrategy think that they're going to go forever, that they're going to hodl MicroStrategy forever. I want to remind you that is probably a very naive thing to do. Do you really believe we are going to go through the next 1000x in Bitcoin and your MicroStrategy shares are always forever going to outperform Bitcoin? No, they're not. We are trending towards a future where the marginal cost of energy production is going to zero, trending towards zero forever. Any premium the MicroStrategy stock has today is probably eventually going to return back to one. Maybe you call me a bear for saying that. Maybe you call me a pessimist for saying that. But it's the truth, and it's what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. I'm a MicroStrategy shareholder. I own MicroStrategy. I wish I had more MicroStrategy, but I've got a good amount of it. But I understand that if my time horizon is decades, that eventually the premium of the fiat premium of the stock that Saylor has is probably going to trend back down towards zero as Bitcoin cannibalizes the monetary premium of all stocks. MicroStrategy is a trade. MicroStrategy is not your dynasty multi-generational wealth. It is a trade. It is a very good trade. It is a trade with probably a very long runway. It's probably going to do very well in a bull market, very badly in a bear market, and do amazing again in a bull market, right? But you must remember and keep in mind, the big advantage you have of buying MicroStrategy stock is capitalizing on the upside and volatility of Bitcoin, plus all of the bubbly premium of the entire stock market in general. You're combining all the stupid premium of the stocks with the crazy volatility of Bitcoin into one thing. But again, the more Bitcoin succeeds, the more that premium shrinks. And so it must be emphasized again. MicroStrategy is a great trade, but remember, it is a trade. Guess what? Michael Saylor is going to dilute on you forever. Michael Saylor goes out there and advocates you buy Bitcoin, not that you buy MicroStrategy stock. And I would advocate the same thing. As somebody that's bullish on MicroStrategy, as somebody that thinks it's going way higher than here, as somebody that owns the stock, I'm reminding you, there's a time to buy and there's a time to sell with any trade. Remember, at some point in the future, maybe that's this year, maybe that's 5 years from now, maybe that's in the bear market when you capitulate, maybe that's in the peak of the next bull market euphoria, whatever it is, remember, take profits into Bitcoin. They're not making any more of Bitcoin. They are making more MicroStrategy shares. Have a plan, okay? You need to make sure if you're going to take profits on your MicroStrategy into Bitcoin this cycle, you got to have a plan for what are your profit levels you're going to do that with. You likely have to make sure you have some sort of over-the-counter desk, okay? What I think is going to be a really big problem if you're somebody that owns MicroStrategy shares is you're going to want to convert those MicroStrategy shares, some of it into cash, some of it into Bitcoin at the bull market top or when you're starting to dollar cost average out of MicroStrategy. Going to dollars is easy because the banks like to take your dollars, right? But if you go to the bank and you suddenly send in, a check, a really big check from your MicroStrategy profits of, let's say, $50,000 to $5 million, right? The bank's going to probably be a little suspicious of that, especially if really urgently you want to turn that into Bitcoin. This is why an OTC desk is something really important to consider. You can wire money directly from your bank account into self-custody Bitcoin with an OTC desk. And the biggest cost of all is not the fee. The biggest cost of all is the opportunity cost. You don't want your money to be stuck in the banking system for 24 hours, 48 hours, a week, or a month because some, low-level regulator in the, bank decided they were going to mark you as having potentially some sort of money laundering or fraud or terrorist money or whatever, right? You want to make sure if you're going to capitalize on the euphoria weeks or months of the Bitcoin cycle, you want to make sure you can move money really quickly. Move money in, move money out, whatever you want to do, that's your decision. My job is to help you end up with as much Bitcoin as possible. Strongly encourage you to look into an OTC desk. If you want help with that, you can reach out to me, give me a text. Just let me know that you're somebody that's looking to probably move, let's say 50K or more. If you're looking to move $50,000 or more into or out of Bitcoin at some point in the next year or so, you should strongly consider an over-the-counter desk. You can reach out to me. I will walk through with you how that works. We'll go through some different options. I don't care which direction you go, but especially if you're somebody in America and Canada, I can definitely help you out when it comes to that. You got to make sure you have a custody plan. If you're going to be converting significant gains in your MicroStrategy into Bitcoin, you have to have a custody plan. Let's say you have $100,000 of MicroStrategy. Let's say that goes to $500,000. Are you prepared to start taking self-custody of $500,000 of Bitcoin within the next 12 months while the entire world is going crazy and bull market euphoria is in full swing? Probably a lot of you are ready for that. But my suspicion is that most of you are not ready for that. And if most of the population is not ready for a change coming along the line, when that change comes, most of them inherently won't get the service and attention they need to make sure they're ending up with as much cash as possible, as many Bitcoins as possible. Of course, you got to have a cycle plan. Everything I've been saying here is with the assumption we have traditional 4-year bull market, bear market cycles for Bitcoin. That may not happen. I'll get to that more in just a moment. But assuming there's going to be a bull market for the rest of this year, and assuming there's going to be a bear market at some point, you have to have a cycle plan. Got to make sure that you're minimizing your risk. You got to make sure you're maximizing your opportunity because there's a very brief period of time. Your family and your loved ones are going to think you're a genius when Bitcoin price is going up, and they're going to think you're an idiot when the price is going down. You have to have a Bitcoin cycle plan so that you are the most effectively helping your loved ones, your family members, your church members, your business partners, your employees, whomever it is. You've got to make sure you have a cycle plan to accelerate education and to accelerate risk mitigation and Bitcoin acquisition for your loved ones. The better of a cycle plan you have, the more opportunity you are going to be able to capitalize on in the coming 6 to 12 months. Okay. Now let's get to our big second piece of news that Ross Ulbricht is free. This is very exciting, right? Speaking of things that are exciting, speaking of things that are very good, right? This is a photo of Ross Ulbricht leaving prison last night. He looks very tired, but very happy. He has his little plant there. I'm assuming that plant was his friend back in prison. And so big shout out and big thank you to Donald Trump, right? As I've been saying repeatedly for a long period of time, you probably should not trust Donald Trump. He has lied before, he has deceived before, he's made mistakes before, and ultimately he doesn't think he needs to be humble before God. So you definitely should be skeptical of Donald Trump, and this is why you need Bitcoin in the first place. However, you got to give credit where credit is due. You got to give criticism where criticism is due. And I have huge credit and huge props to Donald Trump. Thank you, Donald Trump, for doing this. I'm really, really glad to see this happen and to see this man finally make it home. For those of you watching that may not know the full story here, I'll go through it very briefly. Because it's worth a refresher in case some of you are not aware of exactly what the story is or why Ross is important in Bitcoin history specifically. So here is a brief overview. Let me go. Here we go. All right. I think you can see my screen now. There we go. Okay. So this is a post by a guy named Ben from yesterday. Brief description. Ross Ulbricht built a free, anonymous, and open platform on Tor, which is an anonymous internet browser called the Silk Road. Okay, this was about a decade ago. Silk Road sold apparel, art, books, collectibles, computer equipment, electronics, herbs, and of course, drugs. Drugs were the main reason why people wanted it, because people like their drugs. You know, Ross very clearly, if you actually look into it, wanted to make it very clear that this was for the purpose of safe and effective transactions. There are many other anonymous sites that appeared on the internet. However, two main things made Silk Road stand out. First of all, they had rules in place. You couldn't sell child pornography. You couldn't do other kinds of things on there that other sites would allow you to do. Number two, this site would accept Bitcoin, which unfortunately turned it into a very large honeypot, which is, in my opinion, why Ross became such under a massive amount of scrutiny and eventually going to a maximum security prison. The U.S. government gave Ross 2 life sentences without parole for non-violent charges, plus 40 years, including money laundering, for using Bitcoin. Okay. We have to admit that the punish is disproportionate. Am I saying Ross Ulbricht was perfect? No, he wasn't. But punishment is wildly disproportionate, right? Even if you attempt to organize a hitman on somebody's life, you're going to jail for mere decades. You're not getting double life sentences in a maximum security prison plus 40 years to where you're going to solitary confinement if you do an interview, right? That is the kind of treatment Ross went through. Somebody somewhere wanted him gone, and they wanted him shut up. Why? Because there were a lot of Bitcoin in the question. This is a picture of what the Silk Road looked like. As you can see on the left-hand side of the column here, there were many things for sale on the Silk Road back in the day. Apparel, art, books, collectibles, computer stuff, electronics, hardware, all kinds of stuff that maybe people either would want to buy anonymously or things that were otherwise illegal. Obviously, as you can tell by the number of subsections here, drugs, and in particular weed or marijuana, was exceedingly, very overwhelmingly, the most popular thing of choice from the Silk Road. Keep in mind, this was a point in time back before many states in the United States had legalized marijuana. Now, Ross is free because of Trump's pardon. And, I want to give huge props to Lynn Ulbricht, Ross's mom. I had the privilege to have lunch with Lynn about a year ago, a little more than a year ago. Lynn and I spent some time together. And, she was very cautiously optimistic this would happen. And I cannot imagine the feeling that they have today now that Ross is home and that her efforts, her campaign over the last decade or so has finally been fruitful. Lynn Ulbricht is the MVP, of course. Lynn Ulbricht is his mom. She's loved him and cared for him and done so much work to try to get him back for years and years and years. She has fought. She has raised millions of dollars. She has spent millions of dollars. She's done everything possible to get this piece of paper across a president's desk. And of course, many people criticize Donald Trump for ignoring this matter for 4 years during his previous administration. So, as much as we might want to credit Donald Trump with freeing Ross Ulbricht, it's important to remind everyone that that Ross spent an extra, let's say, 7 to 8 years in prison as a result of Donald Trump's previous ignoring of this topic. So, as much as people might be praising Donald Trump, again, he's worthy of praise and compliments and, applause for this executive order. At the same time, feels like it's taken way too long, way too little, way too late. However, at the end of the day, again, props to Lynn, props to everyone involved with making this happen. Peter Spina, who is somebody who's a gold bug maxi, somebody who he and I obviously disagree on Bitcoin. I've had our little spats online in a friendly way. No matter whether people agree or disagree with Bitcoin, a lot of people are really, really glad to see that Lynn's efforts have not been in vain and that Ross is free and that he's coming home. A lot of exciting stuff. Now, a lot of people are asking, when is Ross going to do an interview? I would say give the guy some time. Like, come on, really? If you want to hear Ross's story in his own words and his own voice, highly encourage you to check out this half-an-hour interview from Bitcoin Miami 2021, where Ross gave a telephone interview to the conference of a few thousand people. It's important to keep in mind that after this interview, Ross was severely punished for doing this interview. In fact, my understanding is that he went to solitary confinement for a period of time as a result of this interview. Somebody wanted him really quiet. Now, if I was going to take off my beautiful Colombian hat and put on my tinfoil hat, why has Ross been at the subject of all this debate for so long? It's because there were 200,000 Bitcoin in the question. When you have 200,000 Bitcoin in the question, even when they were only, a couple $100 at the time, the wrong people are willing to go to a very large extent to do evil things to cover up, to cover it up, right? I believe there were certain corrupt federal agents that wanted to steal the Bitcoin and take it for themselves. And ultimately, they framed Ross with all kinds of things that some he did do, many other things. I think it's a very strong argument he didn't do. But whatever, for a lot of people that are trying to think through, wow, this story was crazy. Why did this happen? Just like most things in life, it just comes down to money. Okay, if you want to learn more, here are some posts about it where you can learn about the federal agents charged with stealing the Bitcoin or attempting to steal the Bitcoin from the Silk Road, right? There's a lot of speculation of tampered evidence in his cases. Obviously, the sentencing that Ross got was nowhere near compared to anything anyone else associated with the Silk Road got. So anyway, very glad to see that hopefully this story seems to be wrapping up. That's very exciting. And I think there's something else really important that applies to you when it comes to the freeing of Ross Ulbricht. We've been talking about how MicroStrategy is increasing a lot of shares. We've been talking about how Ross Ulbricht is now free. But now there's a third thing to talk about as well. The fact that Donald Trump kept his promise and let Ross go free, I think is very strong evidence that he may also intend to keep promises made about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Okay, I think the odds have gone up for a Bitcoin strategic reserve now that this man and his little plant are walking free. You should be very excited that this seems like to be a very good development for Ross and his family, and you should be very excited for yourself because it looks like while we should not trust Donald Trump and anything can happen, I am very optimistic and very happy to see that Donald Trump kept this promise because that makes it even more likely he is going to keep this other promise, right? Now, the noise out there, the complaints people are making is that, oh my goodness, Donald Trump's been in office a few days and there's no Bitcoin strategic reserve yet. And oh my goodness, Donald Trump's issuing Trump coin and doing all this crazy distracting stuff. Yeah, I get it, right? It's like, yeah, objectively, he's not issued a strategic Bitcoin reserve yet. Yeah, objectively, he's, messing with all these things he probably shouldn't be. However, at the end of the day, you got to focus on the signal. The signal is that so far, Trump has more or less kept his promise, right? He has essentially done that so far to the people, his constituents that are the Bitcoin, crypto, and, money, supporters, constituents of his, right? It has been shared, right? That both of Trump's sons have been meeting with Bitcoin advocates, predominantly Michael Saylor, Cynthia Loomis, and a few other people prominent in the Bitcoin space, Jason Lowery and Caitlin Long. Trump's sons and Inner Circle have been meeting with them. That is a fact. It is my very strong opinion that Trump coin is silly. I think this is a grift. I think this is a rug pull. I don't think it's legitimate. I think in a couple of years, everybody's going to forget this happened. Yeah, sure, Trump might make a bunch of money. He's going to defraud a bunch of people, but it's a distraction. Maybe it's malice. Maybe it's strong ignorance. Either way, it's not good. It's not a good look. I don't endorse that, obviously. However, the effort is better than no effort, right? I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying Trump coin is right, but at least he's trying to go in that direction of trying to poke different things and figure out what works and doesn't work. And pretty soon, he's going to poke through all the things that doesn't work and realize Bitcoin is the way. Pretty soon, he's going to run out of steam when it comes to pumping his own meme coins. Eventually, he's going to run out of steam when it comes to defrauding people and taking their money in a centralized VC Ponzi scheme, right? Eventually, he's going to realize that doesn't work. And when that blowback happens, we have now 4 years of runway for that lesson to dawn on him and for him to better understand Bitcoin. Okay, all the world's powerful people are going to demand Bitcoin because it cannot be stopped by other powerful people. Bitcoin is money for enemies. Trump coin is money for friends, right? Bitcoin is money for enemies. The US dollar system is money for friends. The Colombian peso system is money for friends. This means that as long as you are friends with people, you get to participate in the economic world, right? But with Bitcoin, you don't have to be somebody's friend to still participate with them, right? Even if you're somebody's enemy, you can't shut them down, you can't censor them, you can't turn them off. And when Trump figures this out, and when Trump figures out that this is the most effective way to back the US dollar, you're not going to back the US dollar with Trump coin, you're going to back it with Bitcoin. Because Trump coin is a piece of paper he created out of thin air. Bitcoin is something that not even Vladimir Putin can stop. And that, I think, is going to really intrigue Donald Trump. Donald Trump wants to be perceived as the big smart man in the room, as the big powerful man in the room. And when he understands that the smartest thing to do, the most powerful thing to do, is to begin allocating Bitcoin, begin allocating to Bitcoin and backing the US dollar with it, that, I think, is going to be a really, really big moment when it dawns on him. Okay, this is the difference between proof of work, which is luck-based, versus proof of stake, which is authority and guns-based, right? Here's a quick reminder of what this looks like with a nice little graphic from Jason Lowery's book, Soft War, that came out a couple years ago. Here is at the dinner, recently, or a photo surrounding a dinner surrounding Donald Trump's inauguration a couple days ago. And the photo, of course, you can see Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg. This graphic here that, presupposes, that shows a representation of Jeff, Mark, and Elon as these quote unquote God kings of their currencies, right? Jeff Bezos with Amazon, Zuckerberg with Meta, and Elon with Tesla, and obviously by extension, not just their stocks, but the technology they control. All these guys are going to figure out Bitcoin. All of them. Jeff Bezos has been meeting with Michael Saylor multiple times in private. Elon Musk has bought at least 10,000 Bitcoin and probably is eventually going to come back around and figure it out. Mark Zuckerberg has named his GOAT Bitcoin. These three guys are competing with each other to see who's going to have the biggest stash of money in the world. And when they realize that Bitcoin is the best stash of money in the world, they're going to realize exactly what I was saying here earlier, that proof of work is better because it is money for enemies over proof of stake, which is money for friends. And when Donald Trump figures this out, the way for him to enshrine his legacy, enshrine his wealth, and enshrine his brand, which is his big obsession, he was to have Trump cover the world. When he realizes that, that's when he's going to go all in Bitcoin, and he's going to go just as hard, just as fast into Bitcoin as he went into Trump coin. In fact, a lot more dramatic, right? So for context, okay, the national debt 5 years ago in 2020 was $25 trillion. Today, at the time of recording, in 2025, the national debt of the United States is $36 trillion. 5 years from now, it's going to be over $50 trillion. We are halfway between 25 and $50 trillion. This is not including the unfunded liabilities of the United States government, which are multiple times higher than this. This is just the national debt. That means over the next 5 years, we are going to be adding roughly $8.2 billion of new debt every single day. For context, MicroStrategy, who we started this video talking out about, MicroStrategy, their entire buys over the course of the last 4 years on Bitcoin aren't even $100 billion, right? That is a MicroStrategy level of holdings every 5 to 7 days, right? Because obviously MicroStrategy's balance is forever increasing, right? But roughly every week, the United States is adding more debt than MicroStrategy has bought of Bitcoin in the last 4 years, actually 5 years. This year is going to be year 5 of the MicroStrategy strategy, right? My point is, while I personally believe there will continue to be bull market cycles and bear market cycles, and personally, I would suggest you to have that in the back of your mind as the most probable scenario. I think more likely than not, Bitcoin price will go flat or down for at least a year at some point in the future. That is totally possible. However, I cannot deny the price action over the last 2.5 years or so has been very different than previous Bitcoin cycles. Yes, in terms of ROI, we're roughly in the same place, but the drawdowns have been much less severe. So while I personally am biased in thinking that history will repeat as it has before, we must admit that the odds of a quote-unquote super cycle omega candle, it's a very, very real possibility. And the people promoting that worldview have a very real point. The U.S. government is adding so much debt, $50 trillion by 2030, assuming we have no new entitlements, wars, viruses, spending, lockdowns, whatever. Assuming we have no new liabilities added to the U.S. government, we're going to be looking at $50 trillion by the end of the decade, okay? $8 billion a day. If just some small percentage of that, right, just went into Bitcoin, that could potentially destroy the cycle theory, and we can have very dramatic upside up to, $1 million Bitcoin, if not higher. I think way higher, personally. In other words, the U.S. government could smash by $100 billion of Bitcoin over the course of a couple months and start a global arms race for digital, gunpowder, and oil, right? As Jason Lowry describes, Bitcoin is different than all forms of political currency, whether it's government political currency or corporate political currency. Bitcoin is different. Bitcoin is analogous to digital gunpowder. It's analogous to digital oil. This is not optional. If you don't have oil, you are going to no longer be relevant in the economic future. If you do not have gunpowder in the future, you are going to be an irrelevant nation. It's the same thing with digital oil. The US government is going to realize they need Bitcoin block space, they need Bitcoin coins, they need Bitcoin hash. That's what they need. They're going to realize that, and $100 billion is nothing to the US government. To Michael Saylor, it's a lot of freaking money, and he's going to issue his stock by 30x to try to get $100 billion worth of Bitcoin. However, the US government sends $100 billion to Ukraine basically every other Tuesday, and nobody seems to notice, right? My point is, think in probabilities, don't be thinking in absolutes. I do not know what's going to happen. Maybe Bitcoin only gets to $150,000 this year, and then it crashes because we have some sort of depression or recession or whatever. That's totally possible. It's also totally possible I'm way too bearish. Trump goes all in Bitcoin, and we're looking at a $3 million Bitcoin in the course of the next couple of years. That is also totally possible. What is most likely in the middle of the range of possibilities? What is most likely is we have something that's probably relatively similar to history. Maybe we outperform to the upside a little bit, breaking diminishing returns, and then maybe we have a little less of a bear market. Whatever it is, you should be thinking in probabilities, not in absolutes. And the fact that Donald Trump has let Ross Ulbricht go is evidence that your probability model for thinking through a Bitcoin supercycle probably should have just increased, because the odds of Donald Trump doing something this bold and this dramatic probably also have gone up. If Donald Trump is willing to take on the deep state and release Ross Ulbricht, who people within the US government were wanting to keep quiet for years, for his entire life, sentence him to death, essentially, I think it's a pretty logical guess to say that the probability of a supercycle have increased. And so this is where I will end the video. Let's say you're excited. Let's say you've been watching this far in the video. Thank you, by the way. You should like and subscribe and do all that wonderful stuff. But if you're watching this far in the video, you probably have a good amount of Bitcoin. You're probably not somebody that's thrown $10 or $20 or $50 or $100 into Bitcoin, right? You're probably somebody that's actually been buying Bitcoin in large volume for a very long period of time. And my encouragement is that through all of this stuff I've been talking about, everything is noise. The Ross Ulbricht news for you is noise. The Donald Trump news for you is noise. The Michael Saylor MicroStrategy issuance of shares. Everything I've said in this video right now is irrelevant to you compared to what I'm about to explain to you. Everything is noise. This is the signal. The signal is you must prepare for unpredictable upside. I don't think it's the highest probability, but you must prepare in the event we do get a super cycle. Let's say there's a 10% chance that cycle theory is wrong, we don't have a bear market, and we just go vertical. Donald Trump buys, Mark Zuckerberg buys, Jeff Bezos buys, Vladimir Putin buys, China buys, India buys, the Saudis buy, everybody buys. Let's say I'm wrong. Let's say this goes to $1 million literally this year or next year. Even next year would be a dramatic increase, a 10x in the course of basically 18 months. Okay. If you have 3 Bitcoin, and if this unfolds, which there was a non-0% chance it does unfold, you will make $2.7 million in the next 700 days. That is almost $4,000 per day. I want you to actually put something tangible with that. Okay, here is some money. I don't know what this is exactly. It's a couple grand, right? Here is some money. Okay, I'm not saying this to say, oh, look at how much cash you got. Okay, I don't care. This is trending to zero, right? Whatever. But imagine holding $3,800 of cash in your hands. Have you ever held $3,800 cash in your hands? Maybe you have, some of you have, some of you haven't. But I want you to visualize that. Hold that in hand. That's what you're going to make every single day if we have a super cycle and Bitcoin goes to $3 million. And some of you are going to say, oh, that's hoping, that's ridiculous. I'm not saying that from an excited, yay, number go up perspective. I'm saying that that's a lot of responsibility. That's a lot of responsibility to hold that much cash, like basically twice as much cash as I'm holding in my hand right now every single day for the next 700 days. Do you understand that if we have a super cycle to only $1 million of Bitcoin, you're going to be making thousands of dollars a day? What if I'm wrong? What if Luke is really wrong? What if we go to 2 million or 3 million or 4 million or 5 million or 6 million? What happens if we go to 6 million by the end of the decade, by 2029 or 2030, right? That's still pretty ridiculous, right? That may mean we have a bear market at some point. This is still a stupid amount of money. And in fact, ironically, you're going to be making even more money per day because it's 6 times the capital in only 4 times the time. You have to internalize these things. You have to actually visualize these things. Hold, go to your bank, withdraw a few $1,000s of cash, 5, 10 grand, whatever it is, whatever the math is. Hold that. Visualize. That is the kind of responsibility you're holding in Bitcoin, literally growing every single day. I'm telling you this because there is a 90% chance you are not prepared to be managing multiple $1 million Bitcoin amounts. You have to be an expert in self-custody planning. You have to be an expert in tax planning and avoiding taxes as much as possible, so you're giving as little as possible to the state. You also have to make sure you're mitigating your lawsuits. Let's say you have 3 Bitcoin. Let's say it goes to $6 million in the next 5 to 8 years or 10 years or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Are you really prepared to be holding $18 million of the world's apex asset? I don't know if you are. Right now, if you got 3 Bitcoin, you got 300 grand. There's a really big freaking difference between 300 grand and $18 million. And the more bullish you are in Bitcoin, the more you should be heeding my warning. If you are ignoring my warning, you probably are not bullish enough on Bitcoin. Everybody wants to hear the number go up stuff, but they don't want to hear the responsibility associated with that number go up stuff. And a lot of you are going to ignore this, and that's okay. 90% of you are going to ignore this, and that's all right. But I want to make it very clear. I have been pounding this table for years now, because many of you, dear viewers, are going to lose money. Many of you are going to have 6-figure or 7-figure mistakes in the next few years, okay? Now, I'm being a little paranoid. I'm being a little heavy-handed here, as I have been in many videos recently. However, the good news is that you'll be okay. You'll be all right, okay? The people from back in 2013 are fine, okay? Even though they lost a large number of their coins, they're fine, right? If somebody had 100 Bitcoin and they lost 40 Bitcoin from a couple of mistakes, they're fine, right? Like Max Kaiser is doing okay, right? Like Max Kaiser doesn't have as many Bitcoins as he had back in 2010 when he was buying them at 30 cents. Like he probably lost a large number of his coins, okay? Like the odds are very high for that. However, I can assure you Max is fine, right? Everybody that was buying Bitcoin at $10, $100, $1,000, $10,000, right? Even if they lost 90% of the Bitcoin, they're fine, right? And maybe you're watching this and you have 1 Bitcoin or 4 Bitcoin or 20 Bitcoin, whatever it is for you, whatever you worked hard to stack, I applaud you, I congratulate you. And you're going to be okay. Even if you ignore me and you neglect and procrastinate your Bitcoin self-custody, even if you lose 90% of your stack over the course of the next 10 to 15 years, believe me, you're going to be okay. You're still going to be able to retire. Everything's going to be okay. But for me personally, I would rather keep more Bitcoin. I would rather keep more Bitcoin, okay? I would rather not give up 40% of my Bitcoin to the state via the estate tax. I would rather not pay a big tax bill. I would rather not lose 10% of my coins because some jerk decided to sue me, right? I would rather not make a silly mistake where I lose 5% of my Bitcoin stack, right? I would rather not do those things, even though I know even if I lost 99% of my Bitcoin, I'm going to be fine in the far future, right? I would rather keep it. And I would rather accept the responsibility that every single day I procrastinate upgrading my Bitcoin security. It is costing me $3,800 of risk. If you have 3 Bitcoin, and if you assume Bitcoin is only going to $1 million in the next 700 days or so, right? That's $3,800 a day. Guess what? If you're watching this and you have 30 Bitcoin, that's costing you $38,000 a day because you're about to go to you're about to make $27 million off of a $3 million portfolio. If you have 30 Bitcoin, you have the risk of $1,000 an hour every hour for the next 700 days. I've been pounding my fists on the table for this to clear my conscience. You must prepare. You are holding the apex asset of the world. You're not holding buildings in Medellin. You're not holding bottles of water, and you're not holding cash in your safety deposit box. You are holding actual Bitcoin, and you need to take the responsibility of that very seriously. I have made that as clear as I possibly could have for a long time, and most of you aren't going to listen. I'm clearing my conscience so that in 2026, when 90% of you have lost some double-digit percentage of your Bitcoin, whether it's 10%, 50%, or 80%, whatever it is, I want to have a clear conscience that, shoot, man, that sucks. Sorry to hear you just lost some, but at least you can't blame me. At least you can't point fingers at me. I did everything I could to possibly warn you. If you want to have a conversation, I'm happy to talk. Book a call with me. The link to book a call with me is in the description below. There's a $99 special right now. Okay, it's a free Ross discount. I'm feeling pretty generous. I'm pretty happy with everything that's going on. I want to have this conversation before the Bitcoin euphoria takes off. Or if you don't want to book a call directly, you want to learn more, just text me, send me your name, email. I'll send you all kinds of information, documents, videos, all kinds of stuff to help you increase your education. Okay. Now, yes, is this self-promotion? This absolutely is self-promotion. Obviously, I want 10 or 20 of you to book calls with me, and that's going to make me a few $1,000s. Great, wonderful, whatever. But I don't care. I'm trying to save you money. I'm trying to give you a discount instead of $250, just 99 bucks, because I want to talk, because the big cost is not hiring me. The big cost is reducing your intangible risk. Every day you delay talking to somebody about upgrading your Bitcoin self-custody setup, you're throwing $3,800 down the toilet. You're wasting that day's opportunity to increase your security and de-risk yourself. Okay, $99 is cheap. $100 is cheap. $250 is cheap. Okay, I'm telling you these things because in the near future, When I am charging $400, $500, $1,000 an hour, I don't want people to complain to me, Luke, why are you price gouging people? You're only in it for the money. I was not only in it for the money. I've been giving away information for free for years, and I'm trying to give a massive discount on my time because the people like you that are still here actually care about Ross Ulbricht, and you actually care about the things that are important. So please understand the price for my time and the price for everybody else's time that are also people in Bitcoin helping Bitcoiners with assistance like this. The prices are only going to go up, right? You want Bitcoin price to go up, but yet you're not accepting that the price for people's time is also going to go up. I'm trying to get this message hammered home really firmly here, because when the people come along with 3 Bitcoin with a daily $3,800 opportunity cost, or the people with 30 Bitcoin with a $38,000 daily opportunity cost, you know, like $150 is dirt cheap. Shoot, $1,500 is probably going to be dirt cheap, right? And so my point is, you don't have to book a call with me. Thank you for watching my videos. Thank you for participating with the free information. I love it. I appreciate it. You all mean the world to me. But please book a call for 99 bucks. I'm not saying this because I'm trying to get a quick, few $100. I'm saying this because I'm trying to help you de-risk a massive amount of cost. And if $99 is something you're not willing to pay to have a 1-hour conversation about the future of your children's inheritance and wealth, then you're cheap and you're lazy and you're going to lose it. And I don't care if you book that call with me, if you book with somebody else, I'm just begging you to do it because probably you're not ready. And if you're procrastinating too much or too cheap enough to not spend at least 1 hour or one small iota of your opportunity cost that you're wasting every single hour by procrastinating this, then you're going to lose it. I'm just telling you, you're going to lose it. Okay. In the same way, Ross Ulbricht's big problem with Silk Road, and he's admitted this, his big problem is that he wasn't paranoid enough about what others would do to lock him up to steal his Bitcoin. He had a massive honeypot of hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, and US federal agents leveraged and manipulated the American government to take his Bitcoin. To a lesser extent, don't you understand that that's what people are going to be doing to you? People are going to be willing to do awful, evil, immoral, stupid things to try to take your Bitcoin. And this is a zero-sum game. Average does not cut it. If you are not paranoid enough, in the same way that Ross Ulbricht was not paranoid enough, you are either going to have a large amount of pain or you're going to lose a large amount of Bitcoin. This is my strong, strong recommendation. Book a call with me directly in the link in the description below, or text the phone number you see on the screen. Send your name, email, how I can help, whatever. But again, even if you don't use me, that's fine. Most of you watching this aren't going to use me. You're going to try to figure this out on your own. I wish you all the best of luck. Focus on reducing single points of failure to 0, not reduce single points of failure a little bit, like a lot of companies market. Reduce single points of failure to actual 0, including yourself. Make sure you're protected against lawsuits and creditors in the future. Make sure you're protected against the tax man. If you get those 3 things set up, you're reducing your risk by 90%. And for goodness sakes, get off the freaking exchanges. I cannot emphasize that enough. So thank you for watching this video. I hope it's been helpful. I hope it's been inspiring for you to take action. And I'm going to enjoy the rest of the day here with some Bitcoiner friends and a beautiful day and a nice, yummy lunch. Thank you, everyone.